Mr. Paul, there he is.
Hey, Dean.
Let's start out with maybe you could do name, rank, serial number, just so we know who we're talking to and can register it. And then what your overview of what you do and what we're hoping that we can accomplish today.
That sounds great. Okay, name, rank, serial number. So, my name's Paul Deloughery. I've been a probate and estate planning attorney for about, 25 years, a little bit more. And and what I've noticed, so I got into doing probate litigation, which is where the families are all fighting over what's left over when someone dies. And just
Right.
I could go on and on with crazy stories where siblings
Knives out.
Yeah, siblings spend $20,000 fighting over a $5,000 Rolex watch or something like that. And I guess what I've noticed is two things. One is that, so at any one time, I have maybe 80 litigation cases going that I'm juggling. And I've noticed almost no relationship between whether there's a trust or whether the family had a trust or was there a will or something like that. Like it's that would be like saying, do red cars tend to get in accidents more often than blue cars or something? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
maybe, but it just very incremental.
Mhm.
And then meanwhile, there's this push by estate planning attorneys and financial planners and so on that, oh, you need an estate plan because then you can avoid probate. So I live in the world where I see that's not really the case necessarily. And it, and what I have noticed is that there's a relationship between, so pretty much all of my cases have some messed up element to them, like in terms of like family dynamics.
Some
Uh,
dispute. Right, exactly.
and not just the dispute, but what causes the
A root
dispute,
cause of the dispute,
the
some
root
kind of
cause.
bad blood between
Yeah,
siblings or whatever. Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, so the root cause is usually like there's a, oh, I don't know, someone in the family has an addiction, or there was a childhood trauma, or s- something like that, or family secret, or just poor communication, something like that. So that's what I have noticed. And what I want to do, so I've come up with a solution like that kind of fills in the gaps for
Mhm.
people who have an estate plan. And just real quickly, it involves like checks and balances and a way of making sure that when mom's 87 years old, that the caretaker doesn't convince mom to transfer the home and all of the accounts to the caretaker, things like
Mhm.
that. So what I want to be able to do is reach reach families who would be willing to spend a little bit more than just having an estate plan. And really, what it needs to be is like on an ongoing basis, like a subscription kind of service to help them to help prevent those kinds of issues. Eh,
So in a way, what is this kind of like a pre-estate, pre-probate or pre-incident like insurance in a way or oversight
I
or
would,
how would you describe?
yeah, so I would say it's more like a maintenance program, like for your car or something like
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Like you buy the
A
car,
warranty or yeah,
warranty.
okay.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Uh-huh.
And now, not everyone is going to want to spend more money over and above the estate plan documents, but some will.
Hmm.
And like I've worked with, frankly, business owners they tend to have this kind of an issue, and they tend to also have a little extra money to pay for it.
So
Um,
for 25 years, you've been doing this and you've seen presumably thousands of situations like this. You've had thousands of cases. Is there, if we were to retroactively look at them and where the problems arose, where the issues came up, what percentage of those would have been solved if they had this service, this
oh boy.
thing that you had, if you look at it, even if you just take the last 100 or the 80 that you currently have, how many of them would have been better off if they were engaged on that level if they had the service that you offered there?
Oh, they would have all been better off. All completely avoided the conflict. I'm not
Yeah.
sure about that, but they would have been definitely better off. It
In
kind
what
like,
specific ways? Is there a
oh,
pattern of, is there a handful of categories that this would fall under, that it would solve or lessen? Or I'm just looking for, if we're creating here, whenever ultimately what we want is, I always take the mindset that when you're coming on here, that we want to grow this, that you want to get
sure.
more people. So if we could create a vending machine that we put money in and out comes a new client, the bookending of that always starts with, what are you capable of? What's the best thing? Before we ever talk about price, before we ever talk about what it is, let's just talk about what your true capabilities are, right?
Yeah,
If you could, if people would just get out of their way and let you do the best thing that you could do for them, what
yeah,
would that be? And then let's look at what would be the impact of that economically, from a pain and suffering, from a thing. What would be the impact of you doing the best thing that you could do for somebody? And then we can figure out, what does that need to cost, and who's the ideal person to take advantage of that, right? What are the characteristics?
sure. Okay, let's see. Okay, so one is I mentioned a business owner where I can't get into a lot of details, but I
No,
helped a
no,
family.
and that's a hundred
Yeah,
percent.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's, I
but
think that part of the sexiness of what we'll be able to draw from
yeah,
is sort of redacted issues. So that,
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
categorically, without
yeah,
giving
yeah,
specifics.
yeah. I've noticed that business owners are busy when the kids are growing up, and there's a pattern that usually the oldest child was the most neglected, and
Mhm,
then the other kids started to, like, the parents started to have a little bit more time for the other kids. And
mhm.
so the younger kids have more of an idea of, like, what, I guess, how hard mom and dad worked, but also just had more time with mom and dad because but usually, and this is totally just a oversimplification, but
Mhm.
um, so the oldest child doesn't relate to the other kids because the other kids think everything's fine and all this kind of stuff. And meanwhile, the oldest child is traumatized almost from not having mom and dad around.
They were there in the ramen noodle days in the one
Right,
bedroom apartment,
right,
getting
right.
everything started, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that creates a friction among the kids, among the
Mhm.
siblings. And then as the business owner gets older, they want to be able to enjoy their retirement, and they really want to watch their grandchildren play together. But
Mhm.
that's how, like in this one situation, I was brought in, and the family paid $75,000 over the course of 9 months to work with them, and uh, yeah, that we did a whole bunch of things. We implemented a family constitution and a code of honor, and just ways of communicating. And at the end of the day, my clients were able to, well, they had a family, like a family vacation that they planned for everyone, and flew
Mhm.
everyone up to this resort, and they got to watch all the grandkids play together. And it was like totally worth it
Right on.
for them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was, yeah,
You see that thing, that's, I've seen in the real estate world, that there's grandparent wars in trying to build the cool grandparent house, right? Like the bunk houses and the pools, and making it like a wonderland, so the grandkids want to come
right.
to this side of the grandparent. That's the
Right,
thing. I think that's like a new power move, is having the bunk house and the
right.
things, the room with the bunk beds for all the grandkids. So if you look at that, I get that as a thing. What kind of practical solution, or what kind of, I can imagine that those things are amplified if there are step siblings, even, that's even a bigger thing,
Mm,
that if the older kids
right.
were there in the original, and then the step siblings got, or half siblings got rich dad as the thing, that there's a difference in that because there's probably maybe some estrangements or some right type of things, a lot of sensitive family
Totally.
dynamic issues, right, that come up. So
Yeah.
what kind of practical problems does that present, and what sort of practical actionable solutions does have you uncovered?
So the problems it presents, see, the issue is that the problems don't really present themselves. From my standpoint as a probate litigation attorney, the problems don't really present themselves until later when the parent dies.
Well,
But
that's what I mean. You're seeing that they come, and I'm wondering, from what I'm trying to find, where the solution that you're offering is going to be like a prevention thing,
yeah,
right? If it, or a solution for that, and how it's practically going to make sense to do something about it now, that there's an inevitability to death,
mhm,
and there's a sense that it is coming and it's going to happen. There's also a universal tendency to want to avoid any talk of that or an
right.
acknowledgement of it. And I had this conversation with a couple of financial advisors. I asked them, what do you wish people would be more open to talking about? And that's what they said was estate planning was one of the things. Like if they were willing to have that conversation and do some proactive planning, it could make a big difference. And I said that what my observation is that most of the time when people are talking about estate planning and things, they're talking about it in hushed tones and somber kind of things, and the just the hard
Right.
facts of
Oh,
reality
for
that
sure.
this
Yeah.
is the thing. And estate planning, even the name of it, sounds like that's for rich people, or it's
Yep.
the kind of
Yep.
thing. And
So
I started thinking about the practicalities of it, that if there were a way to, we already have, it's inevitability that we're going to die. We already have a universally accepted euphemism for unlikely and untimely death being, you never know, we could get hit by a bus
right.
or whatever, right? That's the
Something
kind
could
of,
happen. Yeah.
something could happen. We could get hit by a bus, right?
Yeah.
That's like a universally accepted thing. And I said, what if we just started preparing it like that, like getting people on board with the idea of preparing their bus binder? That became a real thing that they say, because nobody wants to bring that up to the kids or to bring up to anything, but just from a practical measure of saying we're perfectly healthy, everything's fine. But if you never know, if we get hit by a bus, here's the binder with everything
Right.
you need to
Um,
know one place. How
yeah,
many
so that
people die, do you find, that die without any level of estate planning?
say that again.
How many people of the 80, let's just use your active caseload that
Hmm.
you've got right now. How many of those people did not have any estate planning things in place in terms of
Well,
dying without a will or without a trust in place? Or there's certain baseline things that would just be like 80% of the way there.
you're assuming that, and most people do assume that an estate plan is going to fix this. I'll say that, okay, before I said there's probably no relationship. I will say that probably the majority of the cases did have an estate plan, but it's not, but it was done in a way in most of my cases, I think there were documents that were implemented in a way that disinherited the kids or gave
Mhm.
everything to the pool boy or something like that.
Mhm.
Yes, they did have a trust, but it
Mhm.
gave everything to the pool boy. So it's not
Mhm.
like it fixed everything. And yeah, uh, just a couple of
But
things.
that's all that matters, right? Like, really, the thing is, if that was the final wishes of the parent or the deceased, if their final wish was to give everything to the pool boy, mission accomplished, right?
Yeah,
And that's who's the fiduciary
right.
here, or who's your,
Yeah, no, you're right. Yep, nothing wrong with that. I think what happens, so here, let's take one situation of undue influence where
yeah.
because I'm here in Arizona and let's say there's a son that lives close to mom here in Arizona, and there's another son out of state. And just by the very nature of things, the son close here is able to spend more time with mom. And
Mhm.
because of that, is able to take mom to the grocery store, take mom to the doctor's
There was a
appointments.
movie about that just recently, like a funny movie where all the siblings moved into grandma to,
Oh,
or their aunt who was rich, that they
okay.
all now wanted to move in and get in the will for
Yeah.
the thing, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So yeah, for sure. That does happen. What two things that came to mind? You were talking about how people talk about estate planning documents in hushed tones or talk about this. I think there's a psychologically what this taps into is the the very fundamental fear that all of us have. And I philosophically, or I think it's called the fear of annihilation, the fear that we're gonna be gone and not matter. And that really triggers something. So people want to like be able to purchase something on a transactional level that will fix it. And what my challenge is that I happen to know that just because you have a will or a trust doesn't by itself make sure everything's going to be fixed and you're going to be remembered as a good person or by your kids or the kids are going
Mhm.
to take their inheritance and invest it wisely, or they're not going to fight each other, all that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
there's a matter of education, and that's really where my struggle is. And I think what I need to do is just start telling stories about
Yeah,
how,
you've got, listen, the whole, have you ever seen those farmers insurance commercials, right? The
yeah,
we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
right,
They
right.
show the stories, illustrate the things, name them like they're memorialized that,
Yeah,
yep, we saw that, we insured it, we covered it.
yeah,
That
that's a
there's no
great idea.
unique situations, right? That's the thing. I always laugh about those, the squirrels throwing
Yeah.
the acorns at the car or whatever, you know? That so you in your 20 plus years of doing this and the thousands of matters that you've seen,
Mhm.
you probably have that farmer's insurance level of fool me once. You've probably
Right.
learned many lessons, many things. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
even to this day, occasionally there'll be something you're like, huh, that's new. Never saw
Yeah.
that before. And I think that part of this thing is that Dan Sullivan has a great saying where we're looking at this as who do you want to be a hero to, right?
Mm.
And that's really when I said, what's the best thing you can do? We've got to pair that with
Yeah.
who is the beneficiary of what your capabilities are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And mhm,
Um, uh, what would be great is, for example, to find business owners where they're great at running their business, or maybe professionals, they know how to make money, and they did the best job they could as parents, and now there's some dysfunction or just lack of communication, lack of a relationship in the family.
mhm, mhm,
Um, and they need basically just some coaching to them to step into a role of a leader of the family. I would love to do that. And
mhm,
then what else? There's a certain element of educating the kids or trying to get because what I've noticed is, yeah, the parents can be convinced, okay, yes, this is what we need. And then the kids are like, whatever, where were you 20 years ago? And I got to go to work in the morning. I don't have time to talk about this
mm,
nonsense. But I think if I could get in front of people, if I could get in front of the business owners or professionals who have this situation and just start training them, I could do a world of good. And it would take some time and everything, but yeah, it's not a transactional thing because they have to learn new habits, learn new different mindset
mhm,
and new skills about how to communicate and everything, active listening, blah blah blah, and all that kind of stuff.
mhm.
Uh,
Is there, how would you measure the outcome of it? Like, how do you, what's the payoff of the thing? Why is, because anytime somebody's making any sort of financial transaction, there's a payoff or
Mhm.
a value exchange. And in their mind, that this is
Yeah.
valuable to.
Having the family together for Thanksgiving, that would be the payoff.
Mhm,
And a lot of the families, that I deal with, they haven't had that for years.
mhm. So this is all that's family dynamics pre, you're talking about before somebody dies.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, if
you're talking
possible.
about
Yeah, right.
setting up having a better family dynamic, like
Right.
healing or doing all of those things before it's too late,
Right.
really is what it
Yeah.
is, right? That you're so this is, I think, where mining the situations that you're in right now could be good indicators of potential things that could have been solved or avoided with some intervention years before.
One little tidbit that I'll
Yep.
throw in. I've started to talk to other estate planning attorneys, and I've sent out a survey to a whole bunch of different estate planning attorneys.
Mhm,
And the majority of them would see a benefit to referring their clients to something like this, and they see the benefit, you know, uh, I think most estate planning attorneys understand that just having the documents by itself doesn't necessarily guarantee
mhm,
everything's going to be perfect in the future.
mhm.
And yeah, there just isn't there isn't any widely available solution other than what I'm talking about doing. And yeah, that might be a good referral source. And I've thought about, I'm not sure, maybe
So you're looking at this outside of legal work.
yes,
This is
correct,
not per se legal work. It's
correct. Yep,
family dynamics
correct.
counseling or that kind of thing. Okay.
Yep.
So that changes.
Yeah, which is great because then I can scale nationwide and I'm not
Yeah.
just stuck to. And other estate planning attorneys aren't going to see me as competition because I'm not trying to take work from them.
You're trying to make their work easier in the end or whatever, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, and
Huh?
right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And so is there an element of family counseling involved in this, or what kind of flavor are
I,
we getting into here?
I would prefer I would
Uh-huh.
prefer coaching. Yeah, I don't
Coaching,
really
yeah.
have a counseling background, but more coaching
Okay,
or
family.
consulting.
Okay. And so I look at it that there's like a vending machine if we're trying to create it. From your perspective, we're looking out at the possible market for this and saying these are the likely people. But in order to build a vending machine, from we have to build from the prospects facing forward, that they look at what would they stock their vending machine with of their desires and outcomes, that if they could push a button and have that outcome delivered, they would cheerfully do that. And you mentioned Thanksgiving, everybody getting together for Thanksgiving. What would be some, if we're going to stock the prospect desire vending machine with tangible outcomes, that's what it's all about, really, right? Is what is the outcome that they would see as valuable enough that they would put in the money and push the button.
Yeah. Um, the concrete outcomes you're talking about.
Yeah, tangible outcomes. How will they know? What's the confirmation moment that they're going to know? That confirmation moment of Thanksgiving dinner with everybody at the table, and it's all the peak family bonding experience. That would be like, if it's been years since everybody's been together, that there have been long-standing riffs addressed or done. You mentioned the Thanksgiving dinner is one of the things, but what would be some of the other outcomes that you could steer
Oh,
towards for
okay.
people?
Yep. Yep. So there'd be some of this is like organizing a business, like
Yeah.
creating if it were a business, they would have standard operating procedures, and there would be
Mhm,
a way of, oh, making decisions and
mhm,
resolving conflict. And so in the
mhm,
family, the way that looks, there'd be what we call a family constitution,
mhm,
where, and I know that sounds, so that sounds very grandiose and important. And I think most people would think that's just ridiculous because all they have is a house and a bank account. So why should I go through all that effort? So this is maybe not for that family, but for a family with more at stake, um,
oh.
it makes sense to have this where, and
Especially
I
if
guess
there's
what the, yeah,
going to be a meaningful estate that's going to be potentially life-changing for the family members, right? That there's a difference between that and who gets the good china or uh,
right, right.
whatever. We're talking about if there's what level, because there could be a monetary level of this, that are we talking about if there's, is there a difference between the dynamics of how this could impact if there's a $10 million estate or a $20 million estate? What would be?
That that is a fascinating question, and
Hmm.
I've given a lot of thought to that.
Hmm.
So, here's my take on it.
Hmm.
Um, uh, if a family has, let's say, $50 million,
Hmm.
then they qualify for what's called a multifamily office, which is, in a multifamily office is a glorified, I'm gonna get some hate emails from this, but it's a glorified investment firm that provides some
Hmm.
ancillary services. But those ancillary services are important, and they actually provide ways for dealing with family dynamics and all that kind
Hmm.
of, because there's enough, the family has enough invested that the organization or the company can actually buy people, or not buy, uh, pay for people to help resolve
Yeah.
conflicts and help with things like that. Under that, there's just not really much of a solution. So where it gets really, but then under a certain level, how do I say it? Under a certain level, yes, it would be valuable for the family, but I
Hmm.
think where like the real sweet spot is, I think would be somewhere like, let's say 20 million or above.
Hmm.
That's where they don't qualify for this thing called a multifamily office with
Hmm.
a plug and play
Hmm.
solution like what I'm talking about. And the other solutions, offered by typical estate planning attorneys. You get a will, you do this.
Hmm.
That doesn't solve all of the other issues that they have,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
th- that's the point where there's enough money at stake where it's here. I'll drill down to one of the real issues. So the real issue is not necessarily right now, but if the parents with $20 million, if they
Hmm.
think ahead, the danger is for the grandkids. And let me spell that out. Okay, so right now, everything's fine. They have enough money. They can go on vacations and buy new furniture whenever they want and all that kind of stuff. And the kids were able to, they don't necessarily have to work as hard,
They can
and
go to college or
they
get
can go to college, all of
buy
that
a
stuff.
house or yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
The danger then is for at some point, because the kids have less of a work ethic than the parents had, and the
Hmm.
grandkids have less of a work ethic. At some point, the money runs out, and now you've
Hmm.
created a horrible situation because now the grandkids don't have a work ethic and they have
Hmm.
expensive tastes. So that
It's an
that
interesting thing, right? I've heard, I work with a lot of financial advisors, and one of them talks about the difference between the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts, and essentially saying that what they're guiding their clients to do is to set up opportunity-based trusts or
yeah,
inheritances
great.
that
Yep.
if you go to college, we pay for you to go to college. If you start a business, we pay or invest in
Hmm.
your business. You're not just getting one-fifth of you're not just entitled to
Right.
one-fifth of the thing, regardless. We're backing the family opportunity. And I was thinking about, as you said this, the family constitution, it might be an interesting thing to have a family benefits plan. That sounds more like, oh, I'm going to get something here. That constitution sounds legal
Yeah,
and
yeah. No, that's a great idea. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
so much of it is language, right? It's all going to come down to the words and
Right.
the ways that you present things, you know?
Okay. No, that's good.
Mhm.
That's good. So, so there we have it.
Have you done, are you, is this a new thing that you're trying to figure out how to do, or is this something that you're currently, you've got people who are
I,
engaged with you on that level in
I,
the coaching element of it right now?
I want to figure out how to get the people. I know how to serve them. I haven't figured out
Yeah.
how to get them.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's the thing. Like it's the difference. Have you ever heard people talk about vitamins or painkillers? What you've got is that after there's an incident, after somebody dies and it's in probate, they need a
mhm.
painkiller to get
Right,
them through this process. But
right,
nobody's interested in
right.
vitamins to prevent what's going to cause the pain. That's
Part of the
one of the
pain,
dynamics they have to overcome.
yeah, I guess one of the in what I'm offering is both. So the painkiller element is that what triggered it, like in this one family that I helped, the father was looking, he wanted like he wanted to leave a legacy. But it's difficult because most people don't search for that. They were searching for like how to resolve. The felt need was just that the one child was ostracized. And so one branch of the family was, not in communication with the rest. And so he wanted a way of resolving that. So there was a pain. And yeah, it wasn't, you mentioned family counseling. I don't think that's necessarily what they needed. And then
Mm,
so the issue, someone who creates a successful business, they're very smart, they know how to solve problems. And
mhm,
like this one fellow, he assumed that he could just do things on his own, but the issue was he was part of the um, I well problem. I'll
mhm,
just spit it out because he was in the situation. So
mhm,
he couldn't figure out the solution while also being part of the situation that was
mhm,
created the situation or
mhm,
created the problem.
mhm,
I didn't say that very well, but so it needed an outside person to come in and facilitate, yeah, just to facilitate communication and figure out what was going on and go back and forth a little bit. Not that I necessarily want to do that the rest of my life, but I think there's a way of, I think there's definitely a sweet spot of families that need some help where, yeah, and where I can talk to them, give coaching, give guidance, and really move the needle for them in a way that they can't just by going to a typical estate planning attorney, for example.
mhm, mhm.
So what I've thought about maybe is writing a book that I would send to estate planning attorneys, and then but trying to figure out what would be in it for them to
You've
give
hit
a
it on the head.
referral.
That's what I'm trying to draw out of you is what is in it for them. What would be the outcomes that you could help them achieve? And if you're talking about business owners, it's an interesting thing that if they were to think about the enterprise of their family going forward, that there's to their desire to set up everybody to have the opportunity to really grow what is going to benefit future generations of the family as well. So take somebody who would be thoughtfully invested in that as an intention, right? A lot of times there may be, you're not gonna, I think it has to be leading with a desire for people who want to set up their family for the greatest success going forward. Um, if there's things that they can do, as opposed to I always look for the spectrums of this, right? If you look at that, there are people who have positive family dynamics who have the grandparents are or the patriarch is still married and has kids that have kids and everybody is if we draw a line that they're happy or that everybody still is harmonious kind of thing together. And then there's on the other side, all the way from the older brother and the younger brother don't really talk. There's some rift within the family in that, or their step siblings or the half siblings that never really integrated or got together, all the way down at the other spectrum, which is they hate each other.
Yeah.
They're at
Yep.
war. And if you
Yep.
look at that, where on that spectrum are the people who can benefit the most from this? And is it an intervention level or a prevention level? There, you look at the timeline of that, right? It's
Yeah.
like you're probably getting involved at the level where it's too late.
Right
Because
now I am. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like that's the moment that if you're thinking about prevention and then intervention would be the closer thing or whatever, or then resolution or something that would be.
Let me mention something, and I'm not answering your question because I don't think I know exactly how to answer it, but we're on
That's
this
just the
here.
work.
What's that?
This is the work. That's
Yeah.
okay. And that's the idea is that you're not sure. We can't build a
Oh,
vending
yeah.
machine to build something
Well,
if we're not sure on who this
okay.
is for, what it's going to provide
So,
for them.
so I have a tidbit. As an estate planning attorney, because I also
Mhm,
do that, I know that one one of the one of the issues that estate planning attorneys have is not staying in touch with their clients. And this is just very typical. So
mhm,
it tends to be a one and done service. You come to
mhm,
me, you sign a bunch of documents, I give them to you in a fancy binder, and I, say thank you very well.
mhm,
Thank you. And a, a, a percentage of estate planning attorneys will stay in touch with their clients, maybe sending an email or something like
mhm.
that, but it's not typical. I would say that it's the minority of estate planning attorneys will follow up on the anniversary of signing the documents and just say, are there any changes, something like that.
Mhm.
So I was thinking about how I could maybe offer that as a service, but then, that takes me into a different tangent. I want to provide coaching for families, but now I'm getting into a service offering for estate planning attorneys where what am I doing? Am I offering to pr provide a newsletter that they could send out or to help them stay in
I
touch
think
with
there's a
people?
good piece of that, that I think that's a viable opportunity, that if you take this evergreen or equally valuable things, that I think there might be an opportunity for like a, let's just run a working title, call it like Patriarch Magazine or
Yeah.
something, that it's like the things that would be a journal for. And I'm a big fan of creating what I call word palettes. So I would
Okay.
take some time, this would be an exercise that I think would be valuable for you, is taking the time to, I used to, I do like a 50-minute focus finder with this, where I'll set a timer for 50 minutes and I'll just have a notebook and I'll just start brainstorming and putting thought streams and words and
Mhm.
phrases and things that you would hear. And so what I'm trying to do with that is I'm trying to get, like you said, family constitution, and my mind goes to what would be another alternative. That family benefits plan is a different uh, thing. We've used words like with a financial advisor, we did postcards. So replacing the word mistakes. So if you said like the three biggest estate planning mistakes that people make is one thing, but nobody likes to admit that they're going to make a mistake. It's a blame word. So, but
Right.
if you replace the word mistake with surprise, like three avoidable surprises that derail even the most cautious estate plans or the most thorough estate plans or whatever, now you've added a, that anybody could, you can't help that there's a surprise, but the fact that there are three of them and you use the word avoidable, that's a responsibility word in there, right? So we're not blaming you, but we're saying
Right.
it's up to you. There's three mistakes or three surprises that could
Yeah.
happen. And if you know what these surprises are, you can avoid them. How
Mhm.
many people would not want to know what that is, right? So you're just getting,
Sure.
with the language, getting people leaning in. So I would be inclined to just write down those phrases and words and things that would get what your understanding of what the mind and conversations that are going on among your ideal prospects, right? What are the things that are on their mind? And from there, that's where you can pick the words to articulate what you're feeling, what you're seeing, what they're already seeing, because that's the big thing is you have to convey it to them in a way. We're almost 50 minutes in to having a conversation here, and I'm not sure
Right.
that we're crystal clear that if anybody was listening, that they would have a clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. And that not
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that. Just understanding that's where we are. That's base camp one, is you've
Mhm.
got to have a way to articulate what's the thing that we're offering as the benefit.
Right. And th- the best idea I have right is to tell stories about probates gone wrong or
Tell me one
situations.
story like that. Tell me one
Okay.
story. Like, tell me
Oh,
one specific redacted
okay.
situation that, and it doesn't have to be a current one. It can be from 10 years ago or whatever.
Yeah,
To
okay.
totally,
And
totally.
I'm just random because I could do 50, but sure. Okay, let's see. Dad died. Mom and dad collected a whole bunch of dolls. Like that's what they did. They would go to these traveling shows and they would sell these collectible dolls. And
Mm-hmm.
so they ended up having like just a house full of these things. And then let's see, mom died first and then dad died and um what ended up happening, it turns out that the doll, this is a side tangent, but dolls actually had an infestation of little gnats in the little hair and all this
Oh
kind of stuff.
no.
So,
Okay.
and there's so much personal property with coins and all this kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And one of the kids, adult children, got appointed, and there was no way that she could inventory all of the things because it's just too much. So she got a estate company to come in and inventory everything. And it cost about $55,000 to inventory and sell all of the property. And then the net proceeds to the estate were like 60,000. So it was a net profit of 5,000, but not a whole,
Wow. Yeah.
but you had to
Uh-huh.
do something. So and then there were other things, but the one of the sticking situations is that there's a child, I won't say um,
No.
I won't say the sex, but there's an
Uh-huh.
adult child living in a house owned by the deceased parent. And it's been 6 years that the kids have been fighting over what should happen and was it a breach of fiduciary duty for the one daughter to have brought in this estate company and pay so much money or but we don't know what the other option is and then the one child living in the house is complaining that it's taken too long to administer the estate but meanwhile she can't administer the estate because there's someone living in the house and you can't sell it and
Mhm.
and it goes on and finally we have a different personal a different executor put in place right now who's hopefully going to start moving things along but that's just dragged on and 6 years.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Got it. And so how would that have benefited from, is there something that they could have done preventatively, or what
Oh,
would, like,
oh, for
given
sure.
their legal cost involved, what
Yep.
would have been the solution that you would have identified in
Oh,
that?
yeah. So the estate ended up paying, like I said, about $50,000 to this one company. The estate has incurred like $120,000 of legal fees just for spinning wheels and everything. So it could have been solved by having mandatory mediation and arbitration provisions in the documents. And having a where instead of spending years going through the court system, it could have been resolved in 3 months, for example. That would be one great solution. Easy fix.
So this is an interesting thing. It's almost like getting is there an element of creating almost like a stress test for your estate plans or your things? This is
Oh,
what the surprises could be, or that could be an
um,
interesting,
oh, that's a great idea.
like financial advisors will often do a stress test on your portfolio
Yeah.
and see what happens if interest rates go up or interest yields go down or the
Mhm.
market goes up or the market goes down or real estate goes up or down, that they're
Yeah.
putting stress tests on historical norms and
Yeah.
outlier
Yeah.
outcomes.
I mean, it'd be a matter of a 75 point
Yeah,
test or whatever. Kind of
yeah.
like you car in and you get forget what they call it, but yeah, so, something like that. Yeah, it would take a little time. Someone would have to actually do it. It's not like you can just, I'm trying to think.
No, but that's part of it is that
Yeah, no,
like
that's a
getting a
great
home
idea though.
inspection,
That's,
right? Getting a
yeah,
home
yeah, yeah, yeah,
inspection
yeah.
before you buy a house.
Yep,
Uh, so you're not going to buy the house and then find out that you've got an infestation or
right.
that that the foundation's crumbling or all of those things. There's a good use case for that in a
Yeah,
lot of ways.
yeah.
And just thinking about practical things for people who already have, if your market is like estate planning, people who already have estate plans, and this is like a supplemental thing, because typically they're already on the point that they're forward thinking people. We're not
Hmm.
taking people who are head in the sand, not thinking
Right,
about
right,
estate planning at all and trying to
right,
convince them that they
right,
need to do
right,
estate planning. You're
right, right, right.
talking about the proactive people who've already
Hmm.
crossed the line of they've went ahead and done some estate planning, and this surprise test may be a way of ensuring that what their intention was in doing it is actually going to happen, or here's the ways that it might not happen and what
Hmm.
you do to change that or to
Right.
prepare against that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how do you get people to raise their hand? So the offer would be the stress test, and then how do you find people? It could just be ads or uh,
Mhm.
if,
They're invisible prospects. You start looking at, I always look at it, that's level one if building this prospect vending machine is
yeah,
knowing that there are knowable, there's 8.1 billion people on the planet right now. But if we narrow that to the relevant people that we're trying to talk with, you're talking about what would largely be invisible prospects because there's no registration of an estate plan. You don't
right.
know that somebody has an estate plan, like that they own real estate or
Hmm.
home ownership is a visible prospect thing. But
Right.
you can build the parameters of somebody, maybe by age, by
Yeah,
net
for
worth,
sure.
by
Yep.
business owner,
Mhm.
by geography, if you take it
Yep.
to just Arizona, for instance, or Scottsdale or Phoenix
Yeah.
specific, that there's within a radius of where you are. That's how I would start
Yeah.
anyway, is start with your local geography and say, I mentioned working with a financial advisor that we identified their sweet spot of what we were looking for is people with $2 to $3 million investable assets that are 62 to 67 that are homeowners living in $1 million plus home with that are married and conservative voters. That was a thing. So we found within a 20-mile radius of their office, we found over 4,000 of those people just within a 20-mile radius of their in Florida here. And so I imagine if you just drew a 20-mile radius around Scottsdale, that if you identify what the
Hmm.
parameters are that would probably make somebody your ideal prospect, that becomes now your visible prospect list,
Right.
right? Of people. And to start then floating that, then we're on the next layer of that is what's the message that they need to hear in order to, they need to know that you exist. First off, they're not even thinking about it primarily. It's like
Mhm.
there's enough pressing known problems that people have right now. They're probably worried about their arthritis or their knee pain or their brain fog or is this Alzheimer's, whatever. There are probably so many known problems that they're trying to solve or look around that they're not proactively thinking about finding problems that need to be solved, in the future. There aren't going to be a problem until they're gone. In a way,
Yeah.
it's an interesting dynamic. So you need to
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
the subset, the tippy top of that, of people who are proactively, if you took 1,000 people who meet all of your demographic requirements, you wonder how many of those people actually likely have an estate plan.
It- it- Yeah,
Mhm,
so and I realize we can't talk all day here, but one thing that would trigger them would be if they've already gone like they've gone through a probate in their own family.
yes.
And that's usually what prompts people. Oftentimes that's what prompts people to want to come to me and do the planning is like they just went through something
Mhm,
uh, in California, for
mhm,
example. Uh, and the family had a big dispute because things weren't set up right and all this kind of
mhm.
stuff, and so they want to be more proactive. Um, yeah, there is a subset there. Um, okay,
Something to identify. That's your thing, is really thinking about what is it that we can put on the vending machine for them that they can see that this is an outcome that I would like to
yeah,
get. And
yeah,
they need to know that it exists and they need to have the desire for it. And they need to know that you provide that outcome. And this is the price for it. Yes, please push that button
hmm
and get that outcome.
okay, okay, yeah. I guess it's just the people looking for what I'm talking about know that they need something more than just an estate plan because they will have maybe seen it in their own family where maybe their own parents had the will or the trust and
Mhm.
still there was arguments among the family or something like that, or the one brother ended up taking everything. And so they realize that they need something a little bit more. And so the vending machine would be something like yeah, you're right. I need to come up with the words for it.
That's the thing. The thing about the
Great
vending
idea.
machine that makes a vending machine work is that you can have multiple items in it, but
Yeah,
there's got to be something in position 1A in the
yeah,
vending machine
yeah,
with the window looking at it that you can clearly see, oh, that's a Snickers. That's
right.
what I want.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
go over and you push 1A and you put in the dollar and out comes the Snickers.
yeah.
And if it's like the peaceful Thanksgiving dinner with the whole family together, if that's in position 1A, what does that cost? And I want that. Or
Okay.
whatever other issue, whatever other thing, you have to be able to
Yeah.
clearly articulate what
Okay.
those outcomes are that you can help provide.
I really like the idea of the stress test. I can run with that for sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
Create that and start marketing it and see where I go with it.
And maybe that's part of the thing, right? That same pattern that we used with the financial thing, right? Three avoidable surprises that derail even the most cautious retirement plans
Mhm.
could be the same thing of three
Yeah.
avoidable surprises that now derail was a word that we chose in that word palette of the perfect emotional, visceral representation of the words that people use when they're talking about their retirement plan, that we are on track to retire
Mm.
in 3 years. So the worst thing that could happen if you're on a train that's on the track is that you get derailed. That's a
Right.
visceral, visual, emotional attached word. So
Right.
three avoidable surprises that derail even the most cautious, and cautious was a word that was chosen in lieu of conservative, because conservative is a weapon, or it's been labeled. It's a word that nobody
Right.
wants to be labeled conservative, right? But everybody should be and could be cautious, cautiously
Right.
optimistic of the
Yeah.
things. And retirement plans indicate that you've got a plan and that you're on your way. So if you were looking at that pattern there, probably a better word for derail, and there's probably a better word for cautious. But if we said three avoidable surprises that do something to even the most something estate
Mhm.
plans,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
a thing that's going to draw people in curiosity wise, especially if they're people who are the kind of people which I'm assuming would be the best suited for this, are people who like to dot the I's, cross the T's,
Sure.
have a plan for everything. The
For
people, the
sure.
top 20% who are already interested in making things go as smoothly as possible,
For
right?
sure. For
That's who
sure.
we're talking to.
No, I think it's
That's
great.
progress. I think
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's a good outcome for your first conversation about it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Uh,
Yeah, this has
Yeah.
been great. Where can people reach out to you if they wanted to have that kind of a conversation? Because I imagine we're going to
Yeah.
talk to people who are in that situation.
Yeah, just my law firm. Let's see, it's suddenwealthprotectionlaw.com. So sudden, Sudden, wealth protection law. And the idea there is like when people, I named the law firm after like when people come into an inheritance and they blow the
Yeah,
money or don't know what to do. Anyway, so
sure.
that's the reason for it.
That's good.
No,
Okay, so
thank you, Dean.
suddenwealthprotectionlaw.com.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll keep our eye on that. And then
Awesome.
I will see you in some of the Genius Network um,
Absolutely.
sessions.
Yeah,
And so we're going to
thank you.
continue the series on the vending machines. So that'll be good.
Okay.
I'll get to connect with you there as well.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.